What if the biggest obstacle to your success wasn't the world or your circumstances, but you? Not the you recognize, but the version of you that you're too afraid to betray? We spend our lives defending an image, one of being moral, consistent, loyal to our principles. We were taught not to lie, not to manipulate, not to use others as stepping stones. We were told that if we stay true to who we are, eventually we'll succeed. And yet, so many of those who cling proudly to their integrity end up frustrated, invisible, or quietly broken. Because the world, whether we like it or not, isn't designed to reward blind goodness. It's built on tension, interests, and appearances. And if you can't see that, if you hold on to your ideal self as if it's sacred, you'll be devoured by the sharper ones. The colder ones. The ones who knew when to betray themselves. Yes, betray themselves. It's an uncomfortable word. One we avoid as if even saying it were a sin. But deep down, we know the truth. There are moments when staying who we were, or who we dreamed we'd be, isn't enough. Moments when life demands that we rip off the mask of innocence and wear something tougher, something more useful, more real. Not because we're evil, but because we're done being naive. It's not about abandoning all morality, it's about letting go of the kind of morality that makes us weak. The kind that paralyzes us in front of people who have no problem getting their hands dirty. Machiavelli understood this like few others. He saw it through the lens of politics, yes, but what he revealed applies far beyond royal courts or political schemes. What he offered was a radical view of the human condition, a view where success doesn't come from purity, but from strategy. Not from always being good, but from knowing when to stop pretending to be. For him, the world is a chessboard, and we're all pieces in constant motion. If you don't know how to play, if you're unwilling to break your own rules, then it doesn't matter how virtuous you believe yourself to be. You lose. Why is that so hard to accept? Because we fall in love with the moral version of ourselves. The one that tells the truth even when no one's listening. The one that would rather lose with honor than win with cunning. The one that mistakes rigidity for authenticity. But the problem is that love for our moral identity makes us predictable. It exposes us. It turns us into easy targets for those who don't have that emotional attachment to their true self. And that's where we begin to fail, not from lack of talent, but from too many principles used at the wrong time. We think acting with toughness is a betrayal, that being clever means turning our backs on our hearts. But what if what we're really betraying is our potential? What if always being true to ourselves is just a trap dressed up as virtue? It's an idea that hits hard, one that tears apart years of motivational fluff and well-meaning advice. But it's also liberating, because maybe we don't need to become someone else. We just need the guts to let our weaker selves die. The part that seeks approval. The part that asks for permission. The part that settles for less just to avoid feeling like a bad person. Machiavelli didn't write for cynics. He wrote for people willing to see the world without blindfolds, even if it meant seeing their own shadows. His thinking is uncomfortable because it forces us to face a brutal truth. Sometimes, loyalty to our values isn't virtue, it's cowardice. Because behind so many noble gestures hides a deep fear. Fear of being rejected, of being judged, of losing that fake moral high ground that makes us feel superior, even if it also leaves us more alone, more useless. Sometimes, betraying ourselves isn't selfish, it's survival. It's not the end of our integrity. It's the beginning of our maturity. How many opportunities have we let slip away just because we didn't want to look manipulative? How many times did we stay quiet when we should have spoken with purpose? How many times did we choose to lose rather than risk shattering our image of being the good person? We don't even realize it, but many of our defeats are self-inflicted. Because we confuse dignity with passivity. Honesty with awkwardness, authenticity with lack of strategy, and in the name of some fake loyalty to ourselves, we sabotage our own lives. The betrayal Machiavelli talks about isn't vulgar. It's not about stabbing others in the back for no reason. It's deeper. It's about betraying the naive self, the conditioned self, the part of us that still believes the world rewards goodness just because it's good. And in doing so, allowing the stronger self to emerge. The one who knows when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to act, when to fake, when to strike. The one who doesn't fear being seen as dark, if that darkness gets them to a truer light. This isn't about becoming monsters. It's about stopping the habit of living like children. Because real power, the kind that matters, isn't for those waiting to be recognized. It's for those willing to play the game. A game where success isn't built on good intentions but on emotional intelligence, tactical coolness, and the willingness to break molds when they no longer fit. It's a painful process, no doubt, because it means letting go of the parts of ourselves that once gave us comfort. But it's also necessary if we ever want to stop living in the shadow of those who dared. Betraying ourselves isn't losing ourselves. It might be the only way we ever truly find out who we are. It's discovering a new kind of loyalty, not to rigid ideas, but to our highest possibilities. Not to what we think we should be, but to what we're meant to conquer. Because in a world not ruled by justice but by power, if you don't know how to evolve, if you can't adapt, if you're not willing to break your own rules, you'll fade into irrelevance. And sometimes, irrelevance is the worst betrayal of all. There's no betrayal more silent than the one we inflict on ourselves every single day in the name of an image that no longer represents who we are. And yet, we defend that image tooth and nail. We tell ourselves it's the right thing, that there are lines we must never cross, that it's better to lose while staying true to ourselves than to win at the cost of our essence. But how much of that loyalty is conviction, and how much of it is fear? Sometimes we mistake principles for chains. We cling to them as if they were absolute truths, when in reality, they're just inherited beliefs, mental habits, old ways of seeing the world that once helped us, but now hold us back. It's not about living without values, it's about having the guts to ask which ones empower us, and which ones keep us stuck. Because there's a big difference between acting with integrity and acting with rigidity. Integrity means staying aligned with what's useful and real. Rigidity, on the other hand, is blind loyalty to a mindset that keeps us small. Machiavelli, far from being a preacher of cynicism, understood something deeper, that there's something more valuable than moral consistency, our ability to adapt without betraying what truly matters. But to do that, we first need to be brutally honest about what truly matters. And that's where most of us fail. We think our essence lies in the ideal version of ourselves we show the world, when in reality, it lies in our power to evolve. It lies in our ability to choose, over and over again, which part of us must die so something stronger can be born. That's the necessary betrayal. The kind that allows us to change without losing direction. The kind that dares to question our beliefs without losing our soul. But it hurts. It hurts to stop being the good son, the good friend, the good citizen, especially when it means disappointing expectations we never chose in the first place. It hurts to realize that our actions might be seen as cold, calculated, or manipulative. And yet, that calculation is often the price of no longer living according to someone else's moral code. Because those who only act out of duty end up performing for an invisible audience that lives inside their own head. How many times have we pretended not to see an opportunity just because we didn't want to seem too ambitious? How often have we stepped back, not out of wisdom, but out of fear of carrying the guilt of success? There's a deep emotional attachment in us to the idea that being good will somehow earn us success. But the world doesn't work like that. Not because it's unfair, just because it doesn't reward intentions. It rewards outcomes. It rewards results. And it punishes naivety. But there's a tragedy even deeper than that. The tragedy of the person who, in trying not to betray themselves, ends up betraying their own greatness. The person who had the chance to rise, to lead, to take the wheel, but chose instead to stay quiet, stay small, stay agreeable. All in the name of a loyalty that wasn't even real, just learned behavior. Because at the core, what we fear most isn't failure, it's becoming someone different. We're not scared of power because it's dark, we're scared of it because it changes us. And that change demands we kill off parts of ourselves that gave us comfort. To stop being the good one, the honest one, the fair one, and instead become the one who chooses, the one who moves, the one who risks. Of course, this doesn't mean becoming cruel for no reason or destroying people in our path. It means, more than anything, to stop destroying ourselves with the belief that we have to stay spotless to be worthy. Because that obsession with being pure is just another kind of paralysis. It turns us into spectators of our own lives, waiting around for recognition or rewards to show up just because we played nice. But being nice isn't enough. The world is full of kind people who never dared to hold power, who spent their lives dreaming, waiting, sacrificing, convinced that someday someone would notice their worth. But worth isn't something you wait to be given, it's something you claim. Not through force, but through presence. Not with noise, but with clarity. And to get that clarity, sometimes you have to cut the cord that ties you to what you think you're supposed to be. That's when you really start to live. Not as a mask of what you've been told to appear like, but as the architect of what you're meant to build. Maybe that's why Machiavelli still makes people uncomfortable. Because his view doesn't comfort, it wakes you up. He doesn't tell you what you want to hear. He tells you what you need to face. He forces you to ask whether the idea of being yourself is really just a hiding place that stopped protecting you a long time ago. Whether what you call virtue isn't just fear dressed up in nicer clothes. Whether you've made decency an excuse for never picking a fight worth fighting. Because yes, fighting costs you something. It means disappointing people. It means some folks won't look at you with the same tenderness. It means you'll be judged, criticized, told that you've changed. And maybe they're right. Maybe you have changed. Because staying the same forever isn't integrity, it's stagnation. And staying loyal to an identity that no longer serves you isn't noble, it's a slow death. It's not easy to make strategic decisions without feeling like you're playing dirty. It's not easy to say no when your entire life you've said yes just to keep the peace. It's not easy to show strength when all you've ever known is how to survive by being agreeable. But if we really want to take up space in this world, we have to stop apologizing. Stop hiding our ambition. Stop shrinking just so others feel comfortable. Power doesn't come from good intentions alone. It comes from a will that's ready to abandon the comfort of the old self. And that takes courage. Courage to betray ourselves, yes, but not out of weakness. Out of strength. Out of respect for the person we could become if we stopped living by the script of who we used to be. Because there are moments when being loyal just isn't enough. You have to be wise. And wisdom hurts. But buried in that pain is revelation. And from that revelation, a new kind of freedom is born. A freedom without masks. Without fear. Without needing applause for following rules we never even chose. A freedom that isn't ashamed of being ambitious, calculating, or bold when life demands it. Because there's no greater act of power than refusing to live for the expectations of others. And no greater betrayal than postponing who you could become just to stay loyal to who you no longer are. The real betrayal isn't against our values. It's against our potential. Because what we often call loyalty is just fear wearing the mask of virtue. Fear of being seen, fear of being judged, fear of looking like someone we no longer are. But no one grows without leaving a part of themselves behind. No one evolves without breaking something sacred inside. And no matter how tightly we cling to this idea of consistency, of some unshakable authenticity, the truth is that living with honesty means destroying outdated versions of ourselves, even the noble ones, even the ones that once made us feel safe. The price of living with real power isn't cheap. It demands silence when we want to scream, decisiveness when we're trembling, and an almost brutal ability to look at ourselves without mercy. It demands that we understand, to build something meaningful, we sometimes have to come across as cold, even to ourselves. Acting with strategy doesn't always feel good. At first, it can even feel inhuman. But what's truly inhuman is letting our lives burn out in endless waiting. What's truly cruel is continuing to give in, to keep dreaming of recognition that never comes, to keep waiting for the world to reward our goodness like it's a debt it owes us. It won't. The world doesn't reward good intentions. It rewards action. And not just any action, but the kind that comes from a sharp, awake will. A will that's willing to change direction when necessary. A will that refuses to get stuck in nostalgia or paralyzed by the comfort of what others expect. A will that knows growth means no longer asking for permission. There's a moment in life, we all face it sooner or later, when we realize that if we keep being who we've always been, we're never going to reach anywhere new. That's when everything's on the line. We can retreat. Hide in the comfort of an old identity. Cling to that moral pride we've polished for so long. We can stay loyal to our story. Or we can break it. We can betray ourselves. Stare into the mirror with brutal honesty. Drop the need to be liked. Wake up. And finally start taking ownership of our own fate. What Machiavelli offers isn't an invitation to lie just for the thrill of it, or a celebration of corruption as a lifestyle. It's something far more uncomfortable. It's a mirror that shows us just how much of our failure comes from our obsession with innocence. He hits us with a brutal truth. Sometimes morality isn't a compass, it's a blindfold. A blindfold stitched from beautiful words, noble gestures, promises that sound good but keep us frozen in place. But moving forward, acting, deciding with sharpness, calculating, doesn't make us monsters. It makes us human beings who refuse to live on their knees. It makes us people who have finally understood that power isn't inherited. It's not granted from above. It's built. And like any real construction, it requires solid materials, courage, clarity, and a healthy distance from the image we try to project. Because there's something more important than seeming like a good person, being someone who's capable, someone who doesn't crumble under criticism, someone who can be gentle or fierce, soft or ruthless, depending on what the moment calls for. Someone who knows that real virtue isn't a recycled formula. It's a conscious choice. One we make again and again, even if it means wearing the mask of the traitor to protect what actually matters, the blueprint of our becoming. And yes, it may hurt. People may judge us, point fingers, say we've changed. And maybe they're right, we did change. But not because we've become worse. We just stopped begging for approval. We learned that anyone who walks through life afraid to disappoint is locked inside the most polished prison of all, the need for applause. And there's no real power in that. Only repetition, submission, exhaustion. Real power, on the other hand, begins the moment we stop asking our old self for permission to move forward. When we realize that betraying ourselves is sometimes the only way to stay true to our purpose. Not the one we were taught, not the one others expect, but the one that burns inside us and won't be silenced by excuses. That fire inside that pushes us towards something bigger, more uncomfortable, more real, even if it means letting people down. And then something strange happens. Once we stop fearing that betrayal, we start to see clearly. We realize that so many of the values we clung to were emotional inheritances, not conscious choices. That our obsession with being correct wasn't ethics, it was fear of rejection. That our resistance to strategy was really just a way to keep pretending we were still kids in a world run by adults playing different rules. That's when a different kind of life begins. A life without masks, not because we bear everything, but because we no longer need to validate ourselves through purity. A life where every action, every word, every choice is driven not by some external sense of duty, but by an internal intelligence. A life that doesn't fear judgment, because it knows the only unforgivable mistake is to go numb out of fear of what others might say. And that life, the one born after betrayal, won't be perfect, but it will be free. Free from useless guilt. Free from inherited dogma. Free from the need to be understood by everyone. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of living trapped in an idea of ourselves that only keeps us small? What's the point of sacrificing ourselves for a version of coherence that doesn't take us anywhere worth going? Maybe greatness doesn't come from standing still like statues. Maybe it comes from knowing when to break. Maybe loyalty isn't about repeating the same version of our character forever, but having the guts to betray our old beliefs in order to build something stronger. Maybe, just maybe, true loyalty is to the version of ourselves we haven't become yet, but are willing to fight for. Because when we stop fearing internal betrayal, when we accept that growth hurts, that moving forward stings, that winning means letting go, we realize we haven't lost anything essential. What falls away was never really ours. What breaks doesn't define us. And what's born, though it's born in discomfort, in conflict, in sacrifice, has a strength we never knew we had.